Fish Stripes live here on May 4th, entering a new homestand for the Marlins, back at the Depot, hosting the Arizona Diamondbacks for the first of three. And it is a celebratory occasion, I guess, in some ways, some respects. I mean, the team is struggling. They're coming off a sweep, but a couple exciting additions to the roster to help them through this series. The first one you can see right here, Mr. Brian Anderson, your always steady third baseman, back from the IL, back from an oblique injury, and for the first time on the roster for the series, Anthony Bender. Bender Mania. We brought it to life just a couple months after he was a spring training sensation. He finally breaks through to the majors. I'm Eli Sussman, along with Ethan Badowski, Kevin Barral, and we're going to preview this series, one that is hopefully one that can swing the current direction of the team coming off that grueling road trip. I remember a couple weeks ago when we did the stream right after BA went on the IL, we had Kevin on here to talk about it and the effects that it had losing him from the lineup. And now that he's back, I think we'll just go right back to you, Kevin, with what we're expecting from Brian Anderson, what he changes about this team now that he's presumably back as the everyday guy at third base.
Yeah, I mean, it brings a lot of offense. It's going to help on the defensive end. It was difficult not having him because he at the end, right before his injury, I think he was producing pretty well on offense. I'm happy with that. Anderson's back. It's going to bring another young piece to this team, and I think we could easily get back on the win column with Brian Anderson back at third base.
Yeah, it's obviously huge just to have some stability in the lineup. The lineup has been changing around so much, and just to have some bigger offensive potential in there in Brian Anderson. But, it was like a weird year for BA. He always kind of gets off to tough starts, but he really got off to a tough one this year. But he was hitting the ball hard. It was just like he was having some terrible luck. I mean, he had I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a hit on a barrel this year, which is crazy. I don't know if that still stood, but he's had some of the worst luck in the batted ball luck in the MLB this year. So, it could have been the fact that he was dealing with something in his side, something in his side, and could have been affecting him, getting it all the way through the ball. But I'm really excited to have him back, and it should be good to get him going, because if he can get going, that would obviously be a huge boost to this offense.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because there was quite a bit of Brian Anderson slander going around the first few weeks of the season, because his numbers, anyway you slice it, the results were bad. I mean, it was one of the worst slumps of his relatively short career. But as you brought up right there, he's right at the top of the list in terms of guys who underperformed at their expected numbers when you just look at the quality of the contact he was making. And you could just see it in several of the catches that outfielders made right at the wall, right at the warning track, balls that would have been gone if he'd been able to pull it. He allowed balls that died in, dead center field. That this is a guy that still showed.
Did we lose Eli?
Mm-hmm.
Eli's frozen. All righty then. Let's see if we can get him back here soon. But just while we're waiting for Eli, I guess we can go ahead and update the rest of the injury.
All the kind of skills that we know how to feel about Birdie. I think Birdie did fine. Yeah, he did fine during that period.
Eli, we lost you for a while.
We completely lost you.
Yeah, we lost you for a minute there.
Yeah, well, I'm still dealing with my frozen computer.
Yeah.
I'm sure my image is frozen. I just hope my voice is coming through all right.
Your voice is now coming through, but we lost you for a minute there after you were talking about BA's, rough start, batted ball luck, that kind of stuff.
Damn it. Well, I was just hyping up how John Birdie did in his absence. Birdie was fine. Birdie wasn't the reason that they were losing games, and he was the one that was playing third base for a lot of that period. But it's just good to have somebody back that has even a higher ceiling, more well-rounded skill set, and all.
We lost him again.
Yeah. Let's see if we can. Now he's muted. I think he's going to try and figure it out. All right, let's get to the rest of the injury news while we wait for Eli to come back to continue that discussion. I got to find it here. I'm going through my sad PSG tweet, sad PSG tweet, sad PSG tweet. Let's see, sad PSG tweet. Okay, here we go. Okay, Jorge Alfaro is doing agility work and catching drills, so he's working back from his injury. Jazz was going to be evaluated today, but he's expected to resume some light baseball activity this week. Mattingly said that he hasn't started running yet, but they think he will soon. He said he feels good. Starling Marte is still not has still not started baseball activity. Obviously, we know that BA is back. But the big ones really for me, Kevin, and I'm sure this was big for you, I'm sure you were excited about this too, is what the pitching developments in terms of the fact that Eliezer Hernandez threw a 30-pitch bullpen, and he's moving into the next step of his progression, which is going to be he's going to throw live BP. Sixto Sanchez continued his program. Him and George Guzman are both up to throwing at 105 feet. After that, they go to 120. Then they start throwing bullpens. But the biggest one for me, and you guys can jump in here on this, was the fact that Edward Cabrera threw a 20-pitch bullpen. I don't think any of us saw him coming, anytime soon, being back to throwing bullpens and stuff this soon. But the fact that it is May 4th, may the 4th be with all of you, of course. The fact that Eddie Cabrera is back and throwing bullpens, he threw a 20-pitch bullpen yesterday, and he's scheduled for another one on Friday. That's huge because once he throws a second bullpen, then he starts getting to live BP. Then he can start working back into game action, and we might actually see him with some rehab starts here soon. So, Kevin, what was for you in that? What did you take away from all the injury news that we got from the Marlins today?
It's good news, honestly. I mean, good and bad. I mean, it sucks that we don't have Chisholm back. Marte probably won't come back until I'm pretty sure June, around that time. But the good news is we're probably going to get some pitching back. Eliezer threw a bullpen, as he said. Guzman's going to look like he's throwing one, or Cabrera, one of the two. It's looking good. I mean, we need pitching right now. We only have pretty much 3 pitchers. We have Sandy, Pablo, and Trevor right now. That's it. We don't have 2 spots. It's been pretty much bullpen games. We lost Paul Campbell now to the suspension. I don't know if Bender's a starter or a reliever. I'm not sure right now.
He is everything. He's a hero.
Yeah, he can do it all.
Yeah,
So
well, I'll jump in right
starting.
here. Yeah, I'll jump in right here. I think I'm all right. I just had to delete the BA GIF for whatever reason. That may have been screwing this up, and my video is still probably very choppy. But with Edward Cabrera, I'm happy with that. Pretty thrilled. We know that Craig Mish has kind of been on that for months now, and always being very pessimistic about how much, if anything, we would get from him this year, based on a very unusual injury, nerve inflammation in his biceps, which is one that there's just not much other people to compare that to in baseball. But the Marlins have been handling him carefully. I mean, we're probably close to 3 months since he was diagnosed with that injury. And during that time, he hasn't been able to throw. But now over the past month, a little over a month, he's been very gradually ramping up. So he misses opening day of the minor league season. But, I mean, potentially someone that could come off the injured list in the minors and just by the end of the month, hopefully. And then you don't want to put a date on when he would make it to the majors. But we know that once he does get here, I mean, his raw stuff it measures up to anybody in the entire organization, really. I mean, there's a reason why some people thought that he could be the top pitching prospect, even in an organization with Sixto and with Max Meyer. I mean, his 2 very top pitches, his fastball and his slider, and even his changeup. His changeup is probably the one that has made the biggest adjustment that led to that breakout 2019 season. Edward could be pretty special, but he does have now a couple injuries in his history that give you some concern. You don't want to rely on him too much because you never know when he could have another setback.
Well, you just mentioned Max Meyer, and I do have some bad news to report, which is that the Pensacola Blue Wahoos game was postponed tonight, which is brutal because that means Max Meyer's Major League Pro Ball debut will have to wait another day. The Blue Wahoos said we waited 604 days. We can wait 1 more. So no AA baseball. That obviously we had to stream earlier about minor league baseball. That means no Victor Mesa, no JJ Bleday, no Peyton Burdick, no Gerard Encarnacion, and sadly no Max Meyer tonight. So adjust your TV viewing plans accordingly. Might even bring you back to the Marlins game if you were planning on watching that instead. But yes, unfortunate news out of AA today.
Yeah. Also, we'll see what the makeup plan is for that, whether they play an extra game this week or I didn't see the immediate plans on that. I would hope that Max starts tomorrow. Like, they're not going to skip him in the rotation.
Yeah, I know, right? Wouldn't that be brutal? We had to wait a whole week to see him again.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we'll see how they handle things after that. For people that we don't want to go too much into that on this show because Ethan had almost a full hour to cover the prospects earlier today. I hope you guys were able to tune into that. I think that went more smoothly than this show did. So, so for people that are double dipping, we appreciate you. And if you just got to see one stream, hopefully it was Ethan's stream early in the day covering the prospects. So Max Meyer. So high expectations of him, but on an innings limit, I'm sure many of these pitching prospects will be handled very carefully this season. But yeah, still tonight, I mean, all the other full season minor league affiliates in action: AAA Jacksonville, High A Beloit, and Low A Jupiter. Jupiter getting started during this stream. They're getting starting in 10 minutes. And you could, there's a lot of guys down there that will be tweeting out the updates from that one as well. But we need to talk about Anthony Bender now, because Bender was a guy that was immediately, I don't take credit for, I had no idea who he was when the Marlins signed him. I'll say that. I didn't know who he was when spring training started, but it really only took one, maybe two outings in spring training to notice that this is something very exceptional. We don't know exactly how that will translate to real games, but the way, not just lighting up the radar gun, but everything about his fastball, the combination of velo and movement and location and the strong slider that he has. He has two really solid weapons that he was missing bats with, that he was throwing for strikes. And that's such a simple formula that turns into excellent relievers in the major leagues. It's not that complicated. And for whatever reason, this guy was overlooked by the other major league teams. They were able to get him on this minor league deal. And he was almost perfect in spring training. They just needed that opening on the 40-man roster. And that's why the timing of the move happens now, because with Paul Campbell going out of their plans for at least the next 3 months, if not forever, with getting the PED suspension that removes him from the active roster, that removes him from the 40-man roster too. And that allows Bender to just pretty easily slide into the equation from now. And we should be seeing him, if not tonight. Ethan, you were on the pregame with Mattingly, where he says one of the next 2 days will be a bullpen game.
Yeah.
So whether that's tomorrow or whether that's Thursday at the latest, we'll see this guy potentially for one inning, if not more than one inning. He was used in a variety of situations in spring training. I can't wait, man. I can't wait to see him in action.
No, I'm very excited. And I think Mattingly did say in spring training that he was one of their guys that they could use for multiple innings. So it's very possible that in a bullpen game tomorrow that he could be used in that we could see him for more than just one inning. But I mean, yeah, you talked about it, Eli. This is high leverage stuff, and the Marlins don't have a lot of that in their bullpen. This is something I've talked about all year, right? Is that they don't have a guy at the, they have a few guys that are throwing 96, but they don't have these guys that are pumping big gas at the back end of games with a wipeout slider like so many guys in the major leagues are right now. That's why I've been so encouraged by what we've seen from Jordan Holloway. That's why so many of us have been calling for Bender since spring training. He was so good in spring training. He didn't allow a run. He did not allow a run in spring training. He only gave up 3 hits and 2 walks in 8 1/3. So this guy was really fantastic. And Mattingly, said in spring training that this guy has major league stuff. So he didn't even know where they got him from. You weren't alone in not knowing this guy, Eli. Mattingly has no idea where they got this guy from. They basically picked him up off the street, but he is a legitimate weapon that the Marlins could use. It's probably going to take some time for him to get adjusted to, major league hitting. And I don't think he's going to jump into high leverage situations right away. I think they'll kind of, work their way in. But I think what this does allow for is you might see Jordan Holloway in more high leverage situations. You know what I mean? Because now the Marlins, they move on from Campbell. They have this guy kind of down at the end of the totem pole. So that moves Jordan Holloway up a notch. You know what I mean? So you might see him getting more high leverage situations, which is something I've been calling for because he also has high leverage stuff. So big fastball.
I want to stop you there on Holloway because you're not going to be happy with this. This is my theory, though, that eventually they see Bender a lot like Holloway, doing a lot of the things that Holloway has done this first month of the season, and that this is, for the moment, they could coexist on the roster. They need all these arms at the same time. But I think by the end of the month, we might see Holloway finally get an opportunity to do what he was supposed to do this season, which was finish off his development as a starter in the minors, whether at AA or AAA. He's been incredible. And I mean, if Holloway continues to put up 0 after 0, then maybe he does stay. I think the more likely scenario is at some point over the next month, as we heard from the injury updates, Eliezer Hernandez progressing, getting back in the foreseeable future, and hopefully not that far behind him. We see Sixto that at some point over that next month or so, once at least one of those guys gets back, then that gets them more comfortable to send down Holloway. With Bender, they have so much less invested in him. They feel they're excited about him, but he is a reliever through and through. He was a reliever in previous seasons, even when he pitched in indie ball last year, and they only used him out of the bullpen, which just goes to show that they feel there are some limitations there in terms of being an overall pitcher, even if he could be lights out as a reliever. So I think Holloway's days might be numbered on the major league roster through no fault of his own. In fact, he still has potentially could control his own destiny if he just continues dominating. But I see Bender as potentially filling his shoes and getting Holloway kind of back to what they wanted to do with him all along.
Well, I understand that point completely, Eli, and I do agree because, they said even when he was called up and he's been in this relief role, they've said the plan is still to have him start, right? We talked to Kim Ang and I asked her about Holloway, and she said the plan is for him to start this year. However, like you said, if he keeps throwing up zeros, the Marlins are going to have no choice but to keep this guy up there. So you're right. It's completely in his own hands what happens here. But this does kind of – I don't know if it pushes Holloway up. Yeah, it's like I'm trying to figure out whether it pushes him up the pole or whether it's what you are. I think it could be either or. But the way he could push himself up the totem pole and up the pecking order is if he just keeps going out there and putting up zeros. And all of a sudden he could be a guy that Mattingly really trusts. So it is up to him. But I'm sure at some point this year we will see Holloway because eventually he's going to get roughed up. You know what I mean? Like he's maybe not roughed up, but he can't keep putting up zeros forever. So eventually he won't keep putting up zeros. And, the Marlins will probably have to move him back to AAA or AA and get him those starts that they want because they do see him as a starter. But I personally love him out of the bullpen. So, I don't know. It's a good problem to have some really good, interesting weapons out of the pen, but they have to get healthy first. That's the first thing. And so it's good news that Eliezer is getting closer. It sounds like he could be a couple of weeks to a month. It still could very well be June for him in terms of he's going to have to build. So that's the problem with starters. They go down for 10 days and then you got to build them up again and it takes forever. So.
Yeah, well, good. We're getting Kevin back just in time because I wanted to talk about the other aspect of this roster move decision, which was sending down Monte Harrison and keeping up Jose Devers. An interesting choice because Monte is someone that is so much. He hasn't impressed necessarily at the major league level, but he's so much older that you would think that with Brian Anderson coming back, obviously filling third base, that in a corresponding move, they would. My expectation was that they would send down Devers so that he could, much like Holloway, even more than Holloway, Devers kind of needs that more development time in the minors to get up to speed. He's only 21 years old. He hasn't had any experience at AA or AAA. Instead, he gets to stick around for a few days longer. It still seems like his time up here is limited, that eventually maybe when Jazz comes back, as we lost Kevin again, maybe when Jazz comes back, that's when they finally send Devers down. But I guess I'll go to you, Ethan, on that curious decision that they had to make where they're keeping Devers up here a little longer than anybody expected, even though the minor league season has just started.
It's interesting because the outfield is kind of crowded, right? Like we've been dealing with this all year where they have Duvall and Cooper and Dickerson and Brinson and Sierra. So it's like, well, where does Monte fit into that equation? But now you're looking at, okay, Miggy Rowe, Anderson, Diaz, Birdie. So where does Devers come into that situation? You know what I mean? So, and the other thing is it's a tough call because for me, the easy thing is send Devers back down. Go let him get ABs because his season is starting. He would probably be at AA. He would probably be in Pensacola, I would imagine. So go let him get ABs with Pensacola. Monte, like he could use some ABs at AAA probably, and they want him to get full-time ABs there. But wouldn't you rather have Devers, who's further away, getting the ABs than Monte? And Monte is such a weapon with his speed and his defense. Not that Devers. It's weird. They're like, it's such a similar situation where they bring the same things, but Monte is maybe a little more ready at the plate than Devers is. But it's not like either of them have been significant contributors at this point in the major leagues. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm lost on this one. Like, I'm lost on some of the moves today. Like, I'm just trying to figure out why it was him. Why it was Monte, and Monte seems upset, which he has the right to be upset. I would be frustrated if I were him too. But yeah, I don't see the point in not moving on from, or not letting Devers go back down and get the ABs, because he probably needs them more than Monte does right now.
I had internet issues. What were you guys talking about now?
Talking about Devers and Monte. You're muted,
Okay.
Eli. But one thing I just saw Mish tweet, which is interesting, is that Rojas has been dealing with a couple nicks recently. He's had some hamstring tightness, hip tightness. So it could be that the Marlins are just feel they need an extra infielder because they saw what happened with Brian Anderson and Jazz going down right at once, that they feel that Devers, having one infielder on the bench wouldn't be sufficient. They want two. So it could be that, but I don't know. I would have kept Monte, and I would have let Devers go back and get the at-bats in AA, but
in a way, I would agree with you with keeping Monte, but it is true what you might say about Devers, that they need infielders right now more than outfielders. Their outfield right now is pretty crowded. You have Cooper, for example. You have Duvall, you have Dickerson, you have Lewis Brinson. So you have a lot there. And I think, in a way, I would have kept Monte. I think he would have been a better base runner, and he's a better utility player in general. He could come in late game. But Devers, in a way, I think would help more defensively right now instead of getting the at-bats that he does need. So I do agree with you. They should have kept Monte. But in a way, I do understand why they did keep Jose Devers in the big leagues, just because I think they need more infield help right now than the outfield, since it's so crowded in the outfield.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a little hint that they might do this because yesterday the Blue Wahoos, they called up this guy, Zach Owens, who is a pretty low-profile prospect in the system. He was originally assigned to Jupiter. They jumped him up 2 levels yesterday. He wasn't on their opening day roster, but they moved him up at the last minute, which told you that they weren't going to get Devers back, that they would have this hole in the infield. And Owens is a guy that was he's the one that is basically filling in the gaps for Devers at the moment in Pensacola whenever that season gets started. It's unfortunately, I mean, even though we're in a bit of a Marlins bubble here, I think a lot of teams, most major league teams, are going through the same thing right now, where they just have injuries to the regulars, and it kind of trickles all the way down to their farm system as well. And you hope as this gets a little further on that it gets a little bit easier with juggling all this and how it all fits together. Yeah, with Devers, congrats to him on Sunday. Got his first major league hit off of Max Scherzer. That's a fun story.
That's a pretty good guy to get your first major league hit off of. Yeah.
Just a ground ball that went right back to Scherzer and deflected off his glove and infield hit. So nothing too flashy, but we've seen little glimpses of Devers that leave you very encouraged. I mean, he's been a part of a bunch of double plays defensively. It's been really smooth at both shortstop and second base. You could see the speed. And there was even one in his very first game. He had that batted ball that went like 100 miles per hour off his bat, which is an important part of the tool set that people didn't even think that Devers had. That's really his biggest limitation. There was not a whole lot of faith that he could hit the ball hard, and simply being able to do that in a limited showing, that gives you hope that eventually he has that potential to be something more than a utility guy. I think at the very least he could be a utility guy in the major leagues, but the Marlins are dreaming of a little bit more. When you rank him as a top 10 prospect in this organization, you're dreaming of a little bit more, of having that ceiling being a bit better. I wanted to get a little bit to the other team in this series, the Diamondbacks, because a lot of the narratives, unfortunately, we're missing out on because Jazz is hurt. Zach Gallen is not lined up to start in this series. Starling Marte is hurt. These would be fun storylines to go through. There is one other guy. I hope you have him in mind. That is, it'll be interesting to focus on him, and that's Caleb Smith. I mean, you were right. You were the conductor of that regression. Caleb is going to regress. Trade him while you can. He's coming down to earth. Trade him while you can. Back in 2019, and they held on to him an extra year. They eventually traded him. The Diamondbacks put him in the rotation.
Let's just be clear. They did as good as they could have done. That's for sure.
They got Marte out of it, so panned out well for them.
But Caleb, right now, for people that aren't aware, he started this year in the Diamondbacks rotation. He had one start. It did not go great. He got demoted. He's in their bullpen now. He's still around, and he'll be almost certainly he's going to be used in this series. He pitches a bunch of different, mostly multi-inning roles out of their bullpen, but sometimes in high leverage spots. And he's been decent. In his last outing, he got lit up a little bit, but for most of this past month, he's been pretty decent out of their bullpen. So Ethan, what are going to be your emotions seeing him, hopefully, maybe not hopefully, but to see him pitching against the Marlins, whether it's today, tomorrow, or Thursday? There's a good chance of that happening.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at these numbers right now, and they're pretty Caleb Smithy. He went on a run of scoreless 1, 2. Oh, nope. Wait, hold on. Let me look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight scoreless appearances. He lit up 4 in 3 innings in his first appearance, including that Manny Machado yabo to left field that had me all tweeting about how the Marlins traded Starling Marte for him. But, I mean, yeah, his numbers are pretty good. You look at a 3.06 ERA, 3.85 FIP, 11.72 K per 9. But, you know, he's only made one start. All 9 of his other appearances are coming out of the bullpen and have come in. I don't know the context here, but 2 innings, 1.1, 1.1, 2. So it seems like it could be mop up territory or just needing a couple innings territory. So I'm sure that we'll see him at some point. I mean, it seems like he's pitching every couple of days here. There was like only one part of the season where he took like 5 days off, but other than that, he's been pitching pretty much in every series. So I'm sure we'll see some of him. And you know what you get with Caleb. He can rack up the strikeouts at times. He has good strikeout numbers this year. He's got 23 in 17.2 innings. But we all know that he can leave it up in 91 and get cranked every once in a while. So yeah, the Marlins, like I was clamoring for them to get the value for him because of where they were in their rebuild. They needed to get all the value out of him that they could get. But they waited and they did a pretty damn good job, I'll say. I was like, I wanted Jonathan India, but I'm not mad at Starling Marte either. They did a really good job in that deal. And I was actually more sad to move on from Humberto Mejia, who I imagine we'll start seeing in minor league action soon, but with the Diamondbacks. But yeah, it will be an interesting storyline to see Caleb come back and see if the Marlins can get to him or if he comes out dealing like the Dr. K that Luis Davila, my boy, loved so much.
Yeah, I mean, at the time where the Marlins were in the rebuild, I think it would have been best to trade him. He was the most tradable pitcher out of all of them at the time of the rotation, and they got Starling Marte, a great batter, and he's having a great impact on this team. Now he's injured, but last season he was a pretty good impact. Smith could be good or he could be bad when he comes on the mound, and that's it's a mystery of which kind of Caleb Smith we could see tonight in a way. He is pitching against his former team. He probably knows a lot more about that team since he did play with the Marlins. So, I mean, he might be able to rack up some strikeouts against the Marlins in 1 or 2 innings. It could be trouble for the Marlins. Caleb Smith is a good pitcher. He was always a good pitcher. We couldn't see it last year with the Marlins because he only played 1 game until he got the COVID. And yeah, the value was high at the time, and they made the trade. And I think it's panned out for both sides.
Yeah, the Marlins and Diamondbacks, sorry, Eli, have actually made a couple trades that have worked out very well for both sides. Like you look at Gallen, the Gallen and Jazz deal, that could go down as a deal, 10, 15 years from now, where if they both continue on the trajectory that they're on now, that could be, a crazy deal to look back on. But yeah, this is another trade that Smith has provided value to them out of the bullpen, and I'm sure he will continue to. He's putting up pretty good numbers right now, but it could be a trade that you look at as both, working out well for both sides for sure.
Yeah, the one thing that came to my mind, it's not totally true, but I think he was the very first trade that they made during this rebuild when the new ownership took over. I mean, right after the 2017 postseason, him and Garrett Cooper coming from the Yankees, and he wasn't quite the last trade of the Mike Hill era because I think Jonathan VR was traded like a few minutes later. But on that same deadline day, August 31st of last year, that's the day that he was traded before, obviously, Kim Eng coming in. He was so he represents. Unfortunately, he missed all the fun. I mean, he got traded right before they made the postseason, and now he's not involved in this. But he was the one that he was a bright spot, sort of. I mean, he overachieved anybody's expectations here in Miami compared to what he was in 2017 when they got him. So, wishing good luck to him. I hope we see him once just to get an idea of how he's performing now. As we are 20 minutes from the start of this series, Sandy Alcantara for the Marlins. And people might be confused when they see that Smith is starting for the Diamondbacks tonight. That's not Caleb Smith. That's Riley Smith, who is a younger guy, a right-hander, one who not necessarily a top shelf prospect. He's someone that he's all right. I think he's kind of at the bottom of the D-backs rotation right now. But it's interesting to see that Caleb got bumped out of the rotation for another guy with the same name, who is much less experienced at the major league level. And I mean, hopefully that Marlins take advantage of that. I mean, they're coming into the series having lost 3 straight, having lost 7 of their last 10. And they definitely would seem on paper to have the advantage in this game to have Sandy going. We've spoken about Sandy before on here, how great he's been, how he's pitching better than ever this season. He's actually, his last couple starts, let me get this in my mind right. He was pretty good in his most recent start against the Brewers. That's one where he went 7 innings, only allowed that 1 home run that early to Colton Wong, but was pretty great otherwise. And I think overall, you still got to feel great about what we're seeing from Sandy tonight. It's an interesting matchup because I don't think people follow the Diamondbacks all that closely, but they've been one of the best offensive teams in baseball this season, especially over the past few weeks. They're number 2 in all baseball in runs scored this season. Even a lot of young guys or a lot of kind of anonymous players getting involved in that, but not a team that you could take that lightly. I mean, for the moment, that's really the key. That even their team that people don't feel is ready to contend right now, especially because of the division that they're in, behind the Dodgers, behind the Padres, and even this season, despite their decent start, behind the Giants.
Yeah,
but I mean, the Diamondbacks are a pretty decent team, man. I mean, when Kevin and I did most of the previous show solo previewing the Nats series, Kevin was like, they could take 2 out of 3 in the series. And I was being pessimistic, saying they'll take 1 out of 3. And they end up getting swept. So they kind of, I'm not sure how they were feeling inside that clubhouse overlooking the Nats. But on paper, the Nats seems like a mediocre team. And I mean, but this team, any way you slice it, the D-backs are pretty solid. So the Marlins have their work cut out for them, especially knowing that they're not fully healthy yet. Even having BA, they're still down some key players.
Well, is Ketel Marte?
No, he's injured.
He's injured. Okay.
Deal. Yeah, IL.
I was going to say these numbers for him. I didn't know he had only played 6 games. These numbers are crazy for him. But yeah, they're a top 10 offense right now. I think they're 7th in OPS. They are 6th in OPS and 10th in weighted runs created plus. So that's a good offense that they've got right now. And yeah, I'm going to look at some of these names. Kevin, you might have more on them, but I mean, David Peralta is a good player, and he's having a really nice year. He's got an 868 OPS, but Carson Kelly has been one of the better catchers in baseball this year. He's got an OPS over 1,000. So there are some players on here. Asdrubal Cabrera is having a good year for some reason. So yeah, there are some names that you might not recognize off the top of your head, but this is a pretty good team.
Yeah, I mean, this team I don't think was even expected to be this good. I mean, they didn't start good at all this season. And then all of a sudden they've exploded. And that's how I've seen it. They're not competing with the Padres for at least the 3rd seed, maybe even the Dodgers if they heat up. I'm not going to underestimate them this time like I did with the Nationals. Hopefully they at least win 2 out of 3. The first game for the Nationals was not fun to watch. The extra innings that kind of ruined it for the Marlins. But going back to the Diamondbacks, this is a good team. They have a good rotation. They have Matt Bum pitching in the 3rd game. Came off of a no-hitter a couple weeks ago. Zach Allen isn't going to pitch. Thank God. He was great last season. I mean, we have a chance. The Marlins have a chance, and they have to take it because this is a really important series. They were in second place, 0.5 games, 1 win away from going to first seed, and now they're in the last place. So I think this game could put them back in that conversation. It is a tight NL East, so every game counts in this case. Even though it is a 162 game season, this is such a tight division that every game counts. One loss could count. So we'll see what happens. I think the Marlins could take this one for sure. It's not that good of a pitcher, nothing crazy. Riley Smith, 4.76 ERA, 17 innings, 7 strikeouts, nothing crazy. So hopefully the Marlins could take this one against the Diamondbacks, which is one of the most explosive offenses in the league right now.
Yeah, it's a good offense, but this pitching staff is where the Marlins are going to have to take advantage. But the problem is the Marlins haven't really taken advantage offensively all year. This offense has been can I say dismal? Like, it's been really not good. And they have, especially at home, we know all about their struggles at home in terms of, the production that they've had, the lack of production, I should say, that they've had. So right now the Marlins are, let me see, 25th in weighted runs created plus in the league right now. Obviously, you imagine that would be a little bit better with Starling Marte and Brian Anderson for the past 15 days or however long it's been, but somebody's got to find something. I mean, it can't just be Aguilar doing it all by himself. He's stayed pretty hot, but I mean, something from Duvall, something from Garrett Cooper. Where has Garrett Cooper been this year? His ABs recently have been really frustrating. Something from Duvall. Can Brinson find anything? I mean, Miggy Rowe even hasn't been great recently. So this offense is just sputtering right now, but you're looking at 25th weighted runs created plus against 25th ERA in baseball right now. So, it's kind of weakness against weakness. So can the Marlins find, something? Can they find a breakthrough? Because Mattingly, I asked him about coming home, and saying or going home after the series on Sunday, and he just said that Rousen's been working on the offense, and they have to find something. He's been saying all year that they have to find an advantage at home because you have to win your home games. You've got to find an advantage over the teams at home. Marlins Park we know it's not a good place to hit. We've pretty much, that's locked in at this point. It's one of the worst places to hit in the major leagues, I would say. And so the Marlins have to find something here. This is a really good series with a good opportunity to kind of get the offense going, get some guys going. And the lineup tonight, you look at it, it gets a boost certainly from Brian Anderson. It looks a little stronger, but let me look
at least
for
Brinson isn't batting fifth.
Yeah, Brinson, it moves Brinson down the order, takes some pressure off of him. But, Isan's in there, and his ABs have looked better. He homered on Sunday. But this top five, Rojas, Aguilar, Dickerson, Duvall, Anderson, these are established veterans in Major League Baseball. The Marlins, they need something out of these guys. They got to start putting hits. They got to start stringing hits together. It can't just be that Aggie goes deep, and Cooper hits a blooper. That rhymed. Cooper hits a blooper to push one across in the 10th. Mattingly said they're going to have to try and scrap runs across. They're going to have to try and push runs across the plate. They're going to have to find a way to score runs. And this is a big series for the Marlins to do it because it could create momentum as they get healthier. If the offense starts going, now all of a sudden you're looking at an offense that's improving, and then you add Jazz, and then you add Marte and Alfaro and so on and so forth. So this could be a bit, it looks like a series that could kind of get the Marlins going. So,
well, fun fact about Jesus Aguilar is he went on that home run tear right after they left Miami. All 6 of his home runs this year on the road during that single road trip. So, I mean, he single-handedly has been a pretty big difference between their offense on the road and their offense at home. The fact that he hasn't hit anything out at home. But I'm glad I think you both touched on Garrett Cooper. And for me, he might be the most important hitter to watch in this series because it's not like BA, right? Like if you really watch him, you see him struggling. It's not just bad luck. It's him not being the same guy that he was in spring training, not being the same guy that he was last year, not being the same guy that he was for most of 2019. Like he's really struggling right now. And even though he's playing a whole lot more than he was early on this season, where because of Marte's injury, he's been the one guy that you can slide into the lineup over almost any day in right field. And maybe this was just a limited sample, but I feel like his defense in right field it's even worse right now than what I remember from 2019.
It's bad.
I mean, not just like catchable balls, but a lot of singles that he's turning into doubles, a lot of doubles that he's turning into triples because he's just not getting there in time. That's kind of always been a situation with him where that defense is not a strong suit, that as long as he's an above average hitter, you're right. He's not been anywhere close to even average. He's just been like replacement level as a hitter. And when he's someone that plays that poorly defensively, that moves slowly on the base paths, then you're in big danger zone. Like, I don't know how long the leash is going to be. I mean, we had him penciled in as a guy that could be on this team this year and potentially even beyond 2021. But there's going to come a point where if he continues to struggle to this degree, that they have a really tough problem on their hands to figure out.
Well, I'm just going to be honest here. Garrett Cooper, he's been abysmal this year. I mean, if you look at these numbers, the peripherals are terrible too. He has a negative 0.5 WAR right now. He's hitting 177. He's got a 261 OBP. He's slugging 291. He's got a 62 weighted runs created plus. But the biggest problem here is that last year he only struck out at a 23.3% clip. And for a guy with Cooper's power and his hitting ability, for him to be striking out under 25% is really good. Right now, he's striking out at a 33% clip right now, and he's only walking at 6.8% rate. So those are, 33% is way above league average, and then that 6.8 walk rate is below league average. So his ABs are just not any good. There's a lot of three pitch strikeouts. It feels like there's a lot of swinging strikeouts. Let me see if I can find his chase rate numbers. I always get confused.
When I looked up, they're not that much higher.
Yeah,
they're not chasing. It's just that
they're not
he's
terrible,
missing.
no.
It's just he's missing pitches that he used to make contact with.
Yeah, he's swinging at more pitches in the strike zone, but I don't know, man. It's like his chase rates aren't terrible, but his contact rates are. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. To me, it's kind of like this DH thing has seemed to kind of get to him. It's kind of in his head. He's clearly upset about it, and I can't blame him for being frustrated about it. But the Marlins he's had an opportunity recently to get back into rhythm. He's been in the lineup pretty consistently recently, and it's been in right field, and that is it's a liability out there. There's no other way to put it. And I know I'm being harsh on Coop. It sucks because Cooper's a really nice guy, and I like him. And obviously, I know how important he can be to this team, and he's been good in the past for this team. Obviously, he had a 134 rated runs created plus last year in his season where he played the most when he played 117 games in 2019. He had a 111 weighted runs created plus. He was a 1.3 WAR player. So this is a above replacement level player. This is a pretty good player that the Marlins certainly need. And one of the reasons that the offense has been so terrible is because he hasn't been providing the boost that they need from him. He hasn't been the force in the lineup that he has been in the past. And they need him to get rolling, because if he can get rolling, then all of a sudden you're looking at, Miggy Rowe, him, Aguilar's been good, and then BA coming back. Now that's 4 guys, and 4 guys can carry an offense. Look at what the Red Sox are doing right now. I looked at their numbers recently, and they have some sky-high numbers from just 4 guys, and everybody else has been pretty average, and they have one of the better offenses in the league right now. So 4 guys can carry an offense, but 4 guys can also be detrimental to an offense. And right now, the fact that they don't have Cooper, playing well is a problem, and they got to get him. He's got to get himself going. It seemed like he was going to break out with that game in Milwaukee. I think did he homer? Yeah, I think he hit a home run and he doubled off the wall. And you're like, okay, he's hitting the ball hard. There you go. That could be good. And then it just kind of hasn't happened since then. So it would be nice for him to get going this series, but if he's striking out that much, then he's not going to be able to do it. His strikeout rate is just too high for a guy, with his makeup.
Yeah, and I think something else that could possibly be affecting him. Yeah, you said the DH. He was great as a DH last year. And then you talk about defensively. Something that I think could be a struggle is there's so many outfielders. He's switching spots, I'm pretty sure, on positions. He's going from first to outfield to first, so it's completely different for him there. Batting, he's been horrible. I think his WAR is negative, as you said. He's batting 177. He's been at bat 79 times, and he's only had 14 hits, 2 home runs. That's not good at all. I think Cooper, you just give him, he's on a short leash here too, because this team in a way is trying to win now, at least make the playoffs. I think, the big goal here for the Marlins. And if Cooper isn't going to help him right now, I think they might just ship him off trade deadline. I think it's still too early to talk about that, as we've said many times on here. But I think you just give Cooper, he's on a tight leash, but I think we could give him a chance, give him some more time, and at least just find a spot for him where he's going to play there full time. Kind of like what they did with Brian Anderson. He was switching between the outfield and third base. They put him at third base, and that's where he's been this whole time. I think that's what you have to do with Cooper. Decide where you want to put him so he could focus on that spot and not have to be going back and forth. And then maybe his batting's off because he has to dedicate so much time to just one, all these positions that he's playing.
No, that's a great point, Kevin. Yeah, and it's weird because he talked about in spring training how much he's been working on right field, but he was great in spring training, so it's not like I don't know what's happened. I don't know where the switch has gone because a lot of the guys that were pretty good in spring training, Dickerson is having a nice year. Marte was great before he went on the IL. A lot of the guys just kind of carried it over into spring, and Cooper hasn't done that yet.
Yeah, all the pitchers, well, at the top of the rotation, Sandy and Pablo and Trevor, I mean, they were all great in spring, and it translated. It's a little more complicated than that. So, I mean, we won't go too much into that about spring versus real games. Just some quick notes to get to before we get out of here. John brings up the signing today of Rob Zesh. God, you know this guy, Ethan.
Zastryzny. I can't remember. It's been a few years since he was on the
because he's a former Cub. Yeah,
I can't remember how to say his name. Zastryzny. Rob Zish. I'll get this pronunciation down. Rob Zastryzny, I think it is. But yes, he was a former Cub. Right. He was a former Cub.
So he was signed in the immediate aftermath of Campbell getting his suspension. He's going to, I think they said he's actually reporting to Jupiter first for extended spring training. And then in all likelihood, they'll send him out to Jacksonville for AAA to be depth. I don't expect to see him anytime soon in the majors, but he's one of those guys that he's been in the majors before. They don't have very much invested in him. You could see him before the end of the season as a depth guy that could fill a variety of roles. So I was caught off guard. Zastryzny is what our boy Kevin is saying. Zastryzny. There we go. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you'll be seeing him in the immediate future, but you never know, especially in a season like this, how many veteran arms you need. I was caught off guard earlier today when I thought he was added to the roster immediately, and that kind of took me by surprise. But all they did is selected his contract from his independent ball team, and now he's in the organization providing depth for them. What other notes did we have today? Obviously, the first game of the minor league season got underway in Jupiter. Yuri Perez pitched a scoreless first inning. So congrats to him because that's his first official professional appearance. 18-year-old prospect, 6'9", that we're all very excited about and think have a world of potential. So those other minor league affiliates, Jacksonville gets started in half an hour, just 1 hour from now until Beloit gets started as well. It's exciting to see. What else did we want to cover before getting out of here?
Bender.
We mentioned Bender, but not as much as I wanted because of my technical issues, but very excited for Bender that will hopefully, if not tonight, then definitely tomorrow or Thursday, we'll see him appearing in a game. And I guess we should shout out to Isan Diaz on his home run on Sunday against Scherzer. Mm-hmm. And that was, by far the most encouraging sign we've seen from him since he got called up. But overall, he's been fine filling in for Jazz. Not the same skill set and obviously not the same marketability, but he'll have, even when Jazz comes back, they'll have an interesting decision to make in terms of where he fits on this roster, if he does fit on this roster one way or another. And he's obviously in the lineup tonight. He's pretty close to an everyday guy until Jazz gets back, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think this is something that home run, I think, is going to get him going, hopefully. And if it does, I think this offense, it's going to start sparking up little by little. Now, that's the big decision. Once Jazz comes back, I think it'll be like another competition once again, like to see who wins the second base job all over again.
I'll tell you right there. Jazz is going to be playing every day once he gets back. But just final thoughts on that, Ethan, as we're approaching first pitch.
Yeah, no, Isan, it's going to be interesting because it's like this Devers going down today. It's like, do they need an extra infielder? Do they want him getting ABs in AAA? So I imagine he would go down to AAA. But I just want to shout out PSG on a beautiful Champions League run, even though it ended today. That was the one note I wanted to shout out on the pod today or on the stream today. It's a tough way to lose today, but proud of them. And now Marlins baseball and specifically minor league baseball is definitely going to cheer me up tonight. So hopefully the Marlins can go out and get a win for me and make up for it.
I think what they could do is they could lower Devers and they could just keep Isan if he's producing at the that's what I think I could maybe change my answer there.
I just love watching Kevin's reaction when we were like, "Whoa, slow down there, everybody." We all know that when Jazz is back. But it is interesting with Isan that it's like, he lost his job. The one thing I wanted to say was he lost his job in spring training, but he still only played like 60-something games at the major league level. So it's not like he can't find it anymore. But it was certainly the fact that he lost the job was certainly discouraging. But yeah,
right. Well, we'll see. Big opportunity still for him all this week before Jazz potentially comes back. Ethan Badowski, Kevin Barral, Eli Sussman previewing Diamondbacks and Marlins, start of a new homestand. Hope you guys check back on the next stream later this week. Go Fish.